Essentially, in 85 forms, you would go for Return to the Mountain with the Tiger. So in Return to the Mountain with the Tiger, you go for a cross hands, and this may not be part of 28, but it is just to, since we are talking about descending wrists of forms, I might as well capture this. So essentially, again, as you proceed for the form, do not lower the elevation of the wrist all the way down here. You prepare the position and then prepare for what the form is trying to design to do. And that is to go for the elbow strike. Let's go for the elbow strike and then the clearing movement. And even in this clearing movement, you have an elevation that goes from the shoulder descending into the solar plex. So we actually exploit the wrist that goes downhill. Okay, so this is very different from the push. All of the movements that you perform as part of grasping the peacock's tail is an elevating movement where the wrist rises from the abdominal region all the way to the up. But in other cases where you have left knee brush, where you have fist under elbow, and Return to the Mountain with the Tiger, it is more of the wrist at a higher elevation going into a lower elevation. The other case in point is when it comes to saddle to the left and right to tame the tiger. Very similar movement where after you proceed from, in the case of the heel kick, I'm taking the 28 forms as a reference, you proceed from the heel kick, okay, and you have a high elevation, not the lower elevation. You have a higher elevation so that when you go in, the wrists descend, the right descends slower, and the left goes somewhere just skirting the abdominal region and rising up. Okay, and similarly, when you proceed for the next, this is at a fairly high elevation, and you go in, lowering wrists, and assuming the final form. Okay, so close attention to the wrist position is very, very important. The other aspect that perhaps I will capture in a later video is that unless you are very comfortable with the wrist, it will be very difficult work to actually tie the movement with the flexing hip. The hip, the tendons, whatever energy that you have gathered in a weighted leg, that needs to find a release. And if your wrist angles and alignments is off, it is an inefficient form. So to recap again, you proceed from the heel kick. The wrist is still at a fairly higher elevation. This is perhaps a little lower than the earlier forms. This is somewhere close to the elbow. The wrist is still fairly just below the shoulder. You descend. This is a descending wrist, and and once it reaches the abdomen region, it then rises up for the counter, block and counter. Again, you proceed, wrist descending and elevating for the saddle to the left and right to tame the tiger. Okay, another point that needs to be considered.